Alright, so in the previous video we saw how we can use nodes to make our lights more interesting. In this video we're going to talk about a very common problem with this method, and we're going to see how we can use image textures for our lights. Okay, so I have an area light lighting my scene right here, and let me show you the node setup. I have a black body controlling the temperature, and a brick texture giving me these lines here. Right now, my scene looks fine, but if I try to move or rotate my light, watch what happens. So I select my light and press G, and as you can see, the texture is not moving properly with my light. The same thing would happen if I try to rotate my light. So I press R and then Z to rotate around the Z axis, and the texture is rotating independently and it's acting weird. Okay, so if I want my light right here, yeah, I can go back to the shading and change the rotation so it would be fine. But if I try to rotate or reposition this again, I have to come back here and do this every single time. And the problem is that the texture coordinate that I'm using is generated. I can also use the object, and it's basically the same problem and the same result. This problem would be solved if I could use normal, but that doesn't work with area light. Everything goes dark. I can use a spotlight for that, and it works. Let me increase the power, and I get the texture, and if I try to move it, the texture moves with my spotlight and acts as it should be. If I try to rotate this, again, it behaves properly and rotates with my spotlight. Okay, but the problem now is that I don't get those edges. So I was using the area light with the spread value of 1, so it would act like a window, for example, and give me that shape. But right now I have a spotlight and I get a circle here. So I can increase this and make it like it's a very big window, or I can go back to the shading tab and delete this brick texture and use an image texture that I have created. So it's basically a black background with a bunch of white rectangles duplicated all over, looking like some sort of window. I'm going to drag this in my shading tab and connect the color to strength and vectors, and I don't want this to repeat, so I'm going to set it to clip, and I want the X and Y value to be 0.5. Now the rotation back to 0, and now I can increase the scale amount to get a similar result. And now I can just move and rotate this however I want, and it doesn't act like that area light. So I can just rotate this like this and get a result like that. Right now I'm using that image texture that I created, and it looks like an indoor scene. I can just switch this texture with another one and make it look like an outdoor scene. So right now I got this tree branch. I just searched branch silhouettes and I got this. This was one of the first results. I got this in PNG, and I opened up Photoshop, I duplicated, rotated, and scaled it a bunch of times and created something like this. And I can use this here, and for my spotlight, I can rotate this and put the scale back to 1 actually, and rotate this like that, and I can increase this radius amount to fade this a little bit. This radius is basically the same as the spread value in my area light, so the higher this value, the softer the shadows, and the more faded, the softer my texture would be. Okay, so if I crank it very high, I lose basically the detail of my texture, but I get very soft shadows, and if it's 0, I have very hard shadows and all the detail in my texture. But a value of around 0.5 is fine. And now it looks like an outdoor scene. This sofa is placed outside and the sunlight is shining through some trees, dead trees maybe, and I don't have any actual geometry. I haven't made my scene heavy by adding trees here to get these shadows. I just use a simple spotlight with just one image texture, and this is the result that I'm getting. I can use any texture that I want. I can create my own textures. I can use animated textures or color textures to get various results and make my scene look more interesting without actually making it heavy, without adding geometry into the scene. Okay, so yeah, this is it. This is how we can fix that problem with area lights, and you don't have the flexibility. For example, if you used a brick texture, you could just tweak some values and get different results, but now you just have to use image texture, and if you want a different result, you have to use a different image. But you can now get results like this. So these branches can't be done with Blender's textures, so you have to use images for these ones. Okay, so this is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and consider subscribing if it was useful for you, and I'll see you in the next video.